All eyes turn to the northeast as heavy rain invades the area by midweek. Behind it, another Arctic blast, but temperatures moderate by the weekend. All this and more next at the Weather Farm. Welcome to the Weather Farm. We have a heavy storm that's going to bring heavy rain and snow to parts of the northeast. Let's dive right into the details with our weather for our Monday. We have a clipper system that is moving across the Canadian border and into the northern Great Lakes that will bring snowfall to the tune of 2 to 4 inches. We have rain that is moving out of Ohio into Pennsylvania. Generally, half an inch of rain is expected. And as we look down towards the Gulf Coast, we see heavier amounts of precipitation, and an isolated thunderstorm is possible for our Monday. Here we could see rainfall amounts approaching 1 inch if you get under the right thunderstorm. And out west, we continue to have quiet conditions across with scattered snow showers. But it is this area into the northeast that we are going to be watching, not only for the temperatures, but the type of precipitation that we will see as we see a storm develop out of the Gulf Coast and move up into that area later this week. By our Tuesday, we see that area of low pressure with the snowfall, the clipper system. It's moving through Quebec, and it's bringing, again, generally light snow. We see a little bit more moisture being brought out of the Gulf into the Gulf states, into Georgia. Here again, we could see heavier amounts of rain. We have lighter amounts to Kentucky and Tennessee. As this system departs in the northeast, we could see in parts of Vermont, New Hampshire, and into Maine, we could see a little bit of light icing as we see these red lines, these warmer air temperatures moving up into that area. Temperatures may be in the 20s and 30s as the precipitation starts, but they will get above freezing as we move into our Tuesday evening. And this is true as we get into our Wednesday. We see a more defined line of storms making their way through the Carolinas. We have a new low pressure that's developing here into Pennsylvania and into parts of West Virginia. It is going to be this low that is going to be the mechanism that's going to continue to spin and intensify as it makes its way through the northeast into Quebec. Right now it's 1,004 millibar low. By the time it gets into Quebec on our Thursday, that low will have deepened to about a 960 millibar low. We're going to see a lot of wind and a lot of precipitation. And what this low is going to do is as it moves in that counterclockwise motion, it is going to bring moisture off of the warm waters, or the relatively warm waters of the Atlantic, and it's going to help fuel the moisture supply for this system. One thing to note is that each model run that we have seen with this particular storm, it has moved it slightly west, just a little bit. And these blue lines here that follow the low, this is where we're going to see that deepening trough and that next invasion of Arctic air. And as you can see, that trough extends all the way down almost to the Gulf Coast. So we're going to see very cold air making its way all the way to the deep south behind this particular line of storms. But we're seeing that cold air also lag a little bit by about a couple hours each, time every 12-hour period of the model runs. So this is going to, again, be primarily a rain event. We're going to see some snow, but it's not going to be a significant snow amount like we've seen in recent weeks for our northeast. For our Monday, we're going to see warmth extending across a great part of the United States, 50s all the way up into Michigan, 60s and 70s along the Gulf states. Now, where you have those rain showers, your temperatures are going to be held down a little bit into the 50s and 60s. We have 80s down in Texas. And where I mentioned parts of New Hampshire into Vermont into Maine, as that precipitation moves in and your temperatures are in those upper 20s, you could see slight icing, especially at those higher elevation levels. That will quickly transition to rain. So it's just something to keep in mind. Out west, across the mountains, seasonal temperatures, teens and 20s in those higher elevations, 30s across parts of Wyoming. And we really don't see much change on our Tuesday. We see a little bit cooler weather across the Canadian border. The deep cold, the cold that's going to impact the United States, it's being bottled up here into Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Daytime highs not reaching more than 15 degrees below zero. We start to see this surge of warm air across the east. It's going to propel temperatures into the 50s and 60s ahead of this system. And that plays true too for our Wednesday. We see 60s along the coast as far north as Massachusetts. Behind it, in those higher elevations, we will see that rainfall turning to snow in the Appalachians. Temperatures will be held there in the 30s. But we see that Arctic air. It is on the move out of Canada into the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley, eventually reaching all the way down to the Gulf Coast and to the East Coast by the time we get to our Thursday. Again, for a great majority of this area, temperatures at least 10 degrees below zero for your afternoon highs on Wednesday. We're even seeing sub-zero highs into North Dakota and into Minnesota on our Wednesday. Thursday morning looks to be the coldest morning this coming week. We have widespread teens and 20s. We have 20s as far south into Alabama and northern Georgia. We have 20s pushing their way to the East Coast and to the Northeast. Not something we haven't seen yet, but it's just a reminder of this pattern that we're in. We're seeing sub-zero temperatures into the Dakotas, into the Minnesota and Wisconsin. Even along the border, we could be flirting with 20 degrees below zero as we see temperatures just near 30 degrees below zero across the Canadian border. Out west, we are seeing seasonal temperatures, but even a cool down for Texas, where your low temperatures on Thursday morning will be in the 40s. As we make our way into our Thursday, temperatures do moderate slightly, still below zero or near zero for most of the Dakotas. In the Northeast, highs in the teens and 20s, and again, teens and 20s for the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley, 40s and 50s down to the Gulf Coast. The only real warm spots are far southern Florida and far southern parts of Texas. These temperatures, though, this will be the coldest of the week as temperatures will moderate as we move into next weekend. What I want to do now is I want to look at this storm as we move into the Northeast. So we're going to wait for this to reset itself here. So we're going to start with this map when it resets on Wednesday morning. So on Wednesday morning, we would expect to see widespread rain across the Northeast. Look at these red and blue lines. That blue line is that colder temperature where the transition to snow was likely to occur. This particular model wants to be a little bit more aggressive with the changeover from rain to snow. But as I mentioned, each model run has had a slower progression of that cold air into the system. And so while we show this particular model wants to show that the snow and the cold air reaches by Wednesday night, we think it might be closer to midnight. So we would expect widespread rain on our Wednesday with some lingering snow across parts of far northern New York into Vermont and New Hampshire as we exit on our Thursday. It is as that low continues to make its way into Canada, into Quebec, that it deepens and intensifies and brings heavier amounts of snow to that part of North America rather than the United States. In terms of rainfall, through our Friday morning, the heaviest concentrations of rainfall is going to be from Alabama through Georgia into the Carolinas, where we could see 4 to 6 inches in these yellows and oranges. In the darker reds here and across the Northeast, that is an indication of 2 to 4 inches of rain is likely. And our purples generally indicate about 1 inch to 2 inches of rain. This is all going to fall as rain, as we saw from our temperature maps. Temperatures are going to be too warm for any of this to fall as snow, except on the very backside where we could see some of that precipitation turning over to snow late on our Wednesday into early Thursday. As we get into Quebec, most of this will remain all snow, and we see the precipitation along the Canadian border. That's that clipper system that moved through on Monday and Tuesday. We see this with our snowfall map. The greatest concentration of snowfall is going to be along the Canadian border, in the Appalachians, where we're going to see colder weather, and then those higher elevations of New York, Vermont, and New Hampshire, where we could see a few inches of snow as a result of this system moving out on our Thursday. The majority of the snowfall, 8 to 12 inches, across parts of Quebec as that storm moves to the northeast and intensifies into a 960 millibar low as it approaches the Hudson Bay. The snow out west is going to mainly be confined to those higher elevations, to the Rockies, the Cascades, and the Sierras. Here we could see 12 to 18 inches of snow by the time we get into our Friday. So let's go ahead and look at the entirety of our week. We've looked at the storm that's going to impact the Northeast, but But let's look at the entire weather pattern for the United States for this coming week. So we have this area of precipitation along the Gulf Coast for our Monday. We have the departing Clipper system as well making its way. Tuesday, we're going to see a little bit more in the terms of storms here. We see an area of low pressure making its way up. That low pressure will fizzle out as this low becomes the main low for this system. On the backside in the Appalachians, we see that snowfall. Again, this particular model has an elongated system of storms, and it intensifies as it moves to the northeast. But as we look out west for our Thursday, we see another system making its way across the plains, and it's going to bring moisture to the Ohio Valley as temperatures, again, with these red lines, they tend to moderate. So it's going to be rain as it makes its way through Illinois and Indiana, maybe some snow across Michigan. And out west for next weekend, we have another system making its way onshore, and we'll continue to watch that. And we see this pattern not really changing much as we go into the third week of December. We do see an area, a trough here trying to develop along Oklahoma, making its way into the Gulf. But we see two strong ridges to the east and west. What this trough is going to do is actually weaken them and give us more of a zonal flow from west to east, a moderating, warmer air pattern. We do see another trough trying to develop here by the time the middle of next week, but a secondary trough is going to combine with it, and this is going to be the more powerful one. It's going to make its way into the northeast as we get towards the last weekend before Christmas. But we see a strong ridge across the Central Plains for our last weekend before Christmas in December. So what this means is we're going to have warmer than normal temperatures across most of the United States. The exception being we could have an area of disturbed weather here along the Gulf Coast by the middle of next week, which would help keep temperatures cooler. And as another trough develops across Saskatchewan and then another one across Idaho, we could have slightly cooler than normal areas for temperatures in those areas as we make our way through the third week of December. But the overall weather pattern from the Climate Prediction Center centered on the third week of December, going out to Sunday, December 22nd, just 3 days before Christmas. Most of the United States is expected to be above normal, or in the case out west, significantly above normal during this time period. It's only far southern Florida where we expect to see near normal temperatures during this time period. Doesn't mean that every day of this particular time period is going to see above normal temperatures. We will see a warming period. We'll see 1 or 2 days of cold. And then we'll see 2 or 3 days of warm. It's going to be this cycle that we've been seeing last week. We're going to see this week, and we'll see in the third week of December. We thank you for stopping by the Weather Farm. Go ahead and like and subscribe. Click that button to subscribe. Leave us your comments. We love responding to those and hearing what you have to say about the weather in your hometown or the questions you might be having. Click that notification bell so that every time we post a new video, you are notified. Share this with your family and friends. We hope you have a great week, and we will have more information on the developing storm as we get closer to Wednesday.